Hello, this is Gina, Teen Librarian from the Alexander Hamilton Library. Welcome back to Teen Story Share. As you might know, we have been doing a series on folktales, both actual folktales and novels that have been inspired by folktales. So I thought it'd be fun to finish up the last 2 weeks of the series with some folktales that have been either altered and or created in modern times. Unlike your traditional folktale, which is passed down for hundreds, thousands of years by word of mouth before it's finally written down. So today we're going to be reading 3 Whiskers from a Lion's Chin. And this book comes from this collection that I've read from a lot on this series called The Serpent Slayer and Other Stories of Strong Women, which are collected and retold by Katrin Tchana, illustrated by Trina, Schart, Hyman. And what they've done for this story is interesting because they've taken 2 actual folktales, one from Japan and one from Egypt and Sudan, and they've put them together into this new folktale, which takes place in somewhere in the South American rainforest, as far as we can tell. And the cool thing about this story is it's a little different from your typical fairy tale, folktale, which you'll see. Alright, and next week, just as a little teaser preview, we're going to be reading what's called a literary folktale, which is the same thing as a modern folktale or a modern fairy tale, which is entirely created and written down in modern times. Alright, let's jump right into 3 Whiskers from a Lion's Chin. Maria and Pedro had loved each other for as long as they could remember. They grew up in the same village, and all through their childhood they played together, fishing in the river or riding into the jungle to look for wild fruit. Maria played the flute, and Pedro played the guitar, and together they made beautiful music for the whole village to dance to. This is how it always was with them, for they were born to be best of friends. Time passed, and Maria grew into a beautiful young woman who was kind and hard-working, and Pedro grew into a handsome young man, strong and full of laughter. When it came time for the young people to marry, no one was surprised that Pedro and Maria decided to marry each other. Their parents gave them their blessings and helped them build a new house where they hoped their 2 fine children would raise many grandchildren. But soon after the marriage, a war began, and soldiers came into the village looking for young men to join their army. Pedro was forced to leave with the soldiers, and for several years Maria heard nothing from him. She didn't know if he was alive or dead. She cried many tears for her husband, and spent many sleepless nights praying that by some miracle he would return to her safely. At last, when 5 years had passed, Maria's prayers were answered. Pedro stumbled back into the village, thin as a skeleton, carrying nothing but the ragged clothes on his back, and gravely wounded, but still alive. Maria wept with joy to see him again. She took him home and carefully nursed him back to health, keeping watch over him day and night. She cooked him all his favorite foods and fed him like a baby. She made new clothes for him and played her flute for him and told him little stories of life in the village to amuse him. Soon Pedro's wounds healed and he became strong again. But something was still not right. Although Pedro's body healed, his spirit did not. Instead of returning to work and tending his farm, he passed the days sitting in the house with the curtains drawn, drinking tequila and talking to himself. He never played his guitar anymore. When Maria encouraged him to go out and see his old friends or to walk with her through their garden, he raged that she should give him some peace. When she brought him food to eat, he threw it on the floor and smashed the dishes to pieces, screaming at her to leave him alone. In desperation, Maria went to visit a bruja who lived by the edge of the forest. She explained her problem and begged the old woman to give her a charm that could bring her husband back to her. "For it's as if he has never truly come home from the war," she said. "His body is here with me, but his mind is still far away, seeing terrible sights and hearing terrible sounds." "I can easily make you a charm," the old woman told Maria. "There is only one small difficulty. I'm missing a special ingredient, and without it, the charm cannot possibly work. You must bring me 3 whiskers plucked from the chin of a mountain lion. Then I will help you with your husband's problem." Maria thanked the old woman with all her heart and ran joyfully back to her house. Not wanting to waste any time, she quickly gathered together her machete, her flute, and a new baby goat, which she tied in a sack and slung across her back. Then she set out to find the lion. Maria followed the trail that led along the river. Deeper and deeper into the jungle she walked. It was dark and cool. The forest hummed with the cries of birds and the buzz of insects. The path became narrower and narrower, and Maria had to cut her way through the bush with her machete. Still, she followed the path fearlessly, for she knew she must find the lion. Suddenly she heard a rustling sound. A snake slid out from among the trees and curled itself across the path, blocking her way. When Maria tried to step forward, the snake hissed at her, twisting its scaly head and flicking a venomous tongue in her direction. She raised her machete and chopped off the snake's head in one blow. Then she continued on her way. Maria arrived at a bend in the river where the trees hung low over the water. There she heard a lion's roar. It was coming from somewhere above her head. She looked up and saw the little pájaro león, the lion bird that follows the lion and roars just as he does. She knew this must be the lion's watering hole. She tied the baby goat to one of the low-hanging branches and hid herself in the bushes. Evening came, and the mosquitoes descended on her in droves, tormenting her with their high-pitched whining and stinging bites. She gritted her teeth and tried not to mind them, keeping very still. Leaves from the pika plant brushed at her bare arms and ankles, leaving terrible itching welts across her skin. She dug her nails into the palms of her hands and forced herself not to scratch. She waited for the lion. The moon rose high in the night sky, turning the still waters of the river to a ribbon of silver, and at last the lion came out of the jungle to drink. Arriving at the riverbank, the lion raised his enormous head and gave a tremendous roar. When he saw the baby goat hanging from the low branch, he sprang on it and quickly devoured it. Then he drank deeply from the river. Content as a kitten with a belly full of milk, the lion threw himself down on the sandy bank to sleep. Quietly and calmly, Maria crept from her hiding place with her flute in her hand. She crawled slowly toward the lion and knelt on the sand beside him. Then she began to play the songs of her childhood on her flute, softly and sweetly. The lion stretched and purred with pleasure. Still playing, Maria edged a little closer to him. She continued playing for a long time, until she was sure the great beast was sleeping soundly. Ever so gently, she began to stroke the lion's head, cradling it in her lap. When she judged that he was used to her hands and would not wake up, she reached over and plucked 3 whiskers from under his chin. The lion stirred and growled, but Maria kept stroking his head, and soon he was sleeping as peacefully as before. Gently as a mother with a new baby, Maria slid the sleeping lion's head from her lap. Then she crawled back into the bushes and crept through the undergrowth to the forest path. Once she had reached the path, she ran as quickly as her legs could carry her and arrived at the village by dawn. She burst into the bruja's house without knocking, her clothes torn, her cheeks streaked with mud, her arms and legs red and swollen with mosquito bites and a burning rash from the pika plant. The healer was sitting by the fire, waiting for her. "I have them!" Maria cried excitedly, handing the bruja the 3 whiskers she'd plucked from the lion's chin. "How soon can I have my charm?" The old woman took the 3 hairs and put them in her pocket. Then she looked at Maria silently for a few minutes. At last she spoke. "Thank you, my dear," she said with a smile. "Now, go back to Pedro and remember how you made your way through the jungle tonight. Remember the snake that crossed your path, the bushes and brambles that held you back, the mosquitoes that tormented you, the pika plant that burned you. Remember how gently you rocked the fierce lion to sleep. Surely if you could manage to pull 3 whiskers from the chin of a live lion, you don't need the help of an old woman like me. to bring your husband back to you. I hope you can see why I like that story and how unusual it is in the world of folktales / fairy tales. And I hope that you will join us next week for another story. Have a great weekend. Bye.